Welcome.
Welcome.
Talent Matters. How are you?
Very good. Yeah, very
Excited?
good.
Looking forward to this.
I am looking forward to this.
Premier podcast of the year.
I heard it is. I'm looking forward to this and the year ahead.
It's all the marketing that they do around
That's
it.
it.
So Mark, you're from PIC.
Yes.
What's that stand for?
Well, it stands for People in Computers.
Or it did.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I think we made, wasn't the brave, we rebounded in 2017. We were, People in Computers, a little bit 1990s. But yeah, we've been going since 1988. So,
I was going to say, it's a long-term business, isn't it?
It's a long term.
Yeah.
It's a long term. We've got contractors that work for us since the early 2000s. We've got clients that work for us over 30 years.
Yeah.
So, but things change and evolve, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
That's one of the things I want to sort of talk about today is just the evolution of recruitment. 20 years, 30 years, it's a long time. So it would be really interesting. Well, I want to kind of, I like nostalgia. I like, I'm getting old now, so I always think that things were better way back when. It's rubbish today. So it'd be, I want to kind of talk about some of the good, the bad, and the ugly over this period of time.
I would say recruitment's always gone through this period of continuous change. So I think, if I started out in 2003, sort of fell into recruitment like a lot of us, sort of perhaps slightly ADHD mindset, so recruitment is great for multitasking. But I think it used to be very much like tell me.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays it's, you have to tell people, you have to show them, and more importantly, you have to prove it. So I think that's the biggest change. Mm-hmm. But recruitment is still people, still relationships, and it's also, it still is about getting in the room with people.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
that's the kind of the core doesn't change, does it?
No.
But so everyone that I talk to about recruitment, and I don't know if you've ever met anybody. Well, clearly you've met lots of people, but in recruitment that hasn't said, I fell into recruitment. Do you know anyone that's chosen recruitment and gone, that's what I'm doing?
No.
No, I haven't either.
I mean,
there is one person. We're going to get him on the podcast.
We will, do it.
And I'm going to say, we're going to find out why.
Yeah, exactly. No, I went to university, done a modern history degree, and sort of 1999, I sort of said to the world, here I am.
Yeah.
And the world was not interested in my modern history degree. So I'd done a bit of travelling, worked for the Royal Mail in sort of customer service. Then I got a job at Computer Centre as like a training scheduler. So I knew a basic bit about IT, and I had a call from a guy called Peter from Hayes in March 2003, trying to sell me Lotus Notes people. I then tried to sell him back Lotus Notes training courses. The next day we met, and that's when I started my recruitment career in 2003.
Brilliant. What was it that kind of got you into it? How did you fall into it?
I could give
what tripped you up into that hole?
Yeah, it's a good question. I could give you a really well thought out answer. I think it's jeopardy, ultimately. My wife gave up her city career. My daughter was about 18 months old. My wife looked at me and went, I'm not going back to work in London. It's now your time. So, when you've got a young child, a mortgage, recruitment gives you opportunities. So, and I haven't looked back, it's been fantastic. So I think even today, it sounds awful, but having that jeopardy, whether you're a business owner, a recruitment consultant, things have to work. Yeah. So I think in recruitment, if you put the hard work in, under promise, over deliver, that we'll talk about other things as well. But so that's how recruitment's brilliant.
Yeah.
I remember I was on a £15,000 basic, a car allowance of 3,000, and I had to earn 30 grand in the first year.
Yeah.
And when I first started out, I was terrible. I look back, I made mistakes left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
But
everyone does in every career, don't they? When they start,
But then you learn from them.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is don't repeat the same ones.
Yeah.
And it's I had a contract book, but it's been brilliant. Absolutely loved the journey, and it keeps on evolving.
Do you think recruitment gets, as a career, and maybe I'm biased because I talk to a lot of people in recruitment. Do you think it's got a bit of it's got a bad reputation, but actually, or it's got it gets a bad reputation for being very salesy and
I think one of the best. I think being nice is not a weakness. I think it can be a real strength.
Yeah.
One of the best compliments I had, I think it's about 2006. I first started out, early doors. One of my clients said to me, I had about 5 people working in her team as contractors. She went, "Oh, Mark, I love dealing with you. You should think about getting into sales." And so you can deliver a service and deliver value. It doesn't have to, both sides can win.
Yeah.
So it does have a bad rap, but ultimately, if you're professional, you can't have long-term relationships with you taking advantage of situations.
Yes, yeah, because eventually, it will come back and bite you on the backside.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I think the point you made, kind of right at the start, was just around, being very people-centric, and I think from that point of view, your reputation does, that lasts out, doesn't it? So again, if you're taking advantage of people or whatever it is, putting people into jobs that maybe is not right, it's going to come back eventually. And the whole thing is built on people, communication, and your way in which you have that manage your reputation. So I think that's where it's perfect for people that are very much driven around relationship driven rather than, I don't know what
it's not transactional,
money driven.
Even today, if I'm meeting a client, I've met a client probably about October last year, and they sort of gave me their sort of 3-week window, and they were back to back to back. They had no, from about 7 to about 6 each day. They had no visibility. They had a project that was sort of under threat. So my job is to be in front of them. My job is to solve their problem, not exploit it.
Yeah.
And there can be mutually, the contracts we're placing, the project teams we're placing, they get looked after, they get paid on time. It's a minimum expectation. But we pay people on the first Thursday of each month. So so therefore, month finishes, they get paid like they were in some ways a permanent member of staff, that promptly.
Yeah.
We may get paid 28 days, 45 days, but our duty is to make sure that if you've got contracts on site, they're being looked after, they've been spoken to every 2 weeks, 4 weeks. There's one person I think we placed, again, around about November time last year. I've probably spoken more to him in 4 months than his previous agent did in 4 years.
Yeah.
And these become friends of the family. They become your advocates, your sponsors. They will go elsewhere. Your clients may move. So it's all about investing time in relationships. It's absolutely pivotal to what we do.
And that, I think that's underrated, isn't it? Because in this current world where everything is tracked all the time, how many people are looking here? What's the ROI? Sometimes your reputation is, and the relationship is quite difficult to put an actual figure on that on that. But it definitely returns all the time, every time. You just don't know kind of when and how it's going to...
If you want instant gratification, it very rarely comes.
Yeah.
So we placed a couple of people in Australia, for example, that were clients of ours in the late 1990s, and we've followed them. They were clients, but we never worked with them. But when this opportunity came up in Australia for this project where the resource only existed in the Northern Hemisphere, not the Southern Hemisphere, we knew where the people were. So there's people that have worked for us, in the last sort of 2 to 3 years that have known about us for 30 years. So that tracking those relationships, So if you want to it's like buying a house, you want an instant return of your investment. It may not happen.
Yeah.
But over time, it definitely pays back.
We're all a bit impatient sometimes.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Hang on, I did something nice. Why is it? Yeah, you have to wait. And sometimes it never. This is the thing. It's not always completely quid pro quo or completely directly proportionate, is it? It's.
I'm not religious, but I believe in the recruitment gods. So the amount of times that you do the right thing, you do the right thing by people, and your payoff comes up in a completely unexpected area.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to say. This is where recruitment is fantastic. If you speak to 20 people in a clients, candidates, a week and spend half an hour, 45 minutes with them on virtually, face to face, something will happen.
Yeah.
And it often comes from a referral. So it's invest your time.
Brand. I'm sure this is it's all about the brand.
Yeah.
So you mentioned around Australia there. We were talking before we started recording around the international aspect of your business. Now this is something that's like this is really kind of piqued my interest. So you were talking about a role you're working in Korea, and there's other countries that you're working in. Let's talk a little bit about that and how that works, and the logistical challenges of that. How you're finding these clients, how you're finding the candidates, what the language barrier. I mean, there's so much to that, right?
It's generally really exciting, and this is perhaps COVID was a challenging time for everyone. But one of the best things that happened post COVID was that you can do international work. So if I look at my week ahead, I've got a virtual meeting with a CTO for an investment management company in Boston tomorrow, USA. We're doing stuff in Canada that should crystallise this week, and we're expecting, we've got boots on the ground there, people working in Canada. We're expecting potentially to have an offer in Germany. I'll come to Korea, we've got stuff in Korea, we've got some starting next month in Australia. So it's fantastic. Admittedly, the trade-off is I'm permanently fixated to my phone in the morning and at night.
Like 24-hour working going on.
It is,
here.
but if I look at, say, if I take Korea for example, this is one of my colleagues that's doing this work. She knows so much about the APAC market, and what I think, working for a smaller company like with us, we'll market map, we'll do the competitor analysis, we'll let the client know how their brand is perceived in marketplace. We'll probably identify perhaps a couple of their peers that are doing really well. Conversely, perhaps a couple of peers that are not doing so well, and we've got a bit more time. So we're doing video interviews, we're doing a long list, but it takes time. It's an investment, but I think the huge thing is that we have to deep dive into the market, and the Koreans will tend not to move as often. They will want to know what the career is for them. Also, from a cultural point of view, it's becoming more of an equal society. It was probably quite male dominated up until quite a few years ago, and perhaps the drinking culture was still in existence in some areas. So it's a change. Yeah. So what our role is to take the opportunity and role to the marketplace. Yeah. By doing that, the candidates we're speaking to aren't actively looking. So when we sort of present a shortlist of 3 to 4 people, we know they're good, we're taking references on, referrals on them. Therefore, if the client offers, they're not interviewing elsewhere. Whereas if you just respond to an ad, then chances are that candidate sent their CV to you, and 8 or 9 others.
Yes,
so what we find is our offer acceptance rate is really high, but also we're adding value. So I think this is where modern day recruits have to be different. You have to add value, not just CVs. So we can share some of the market intel that is open in the marketplace to our client to make them aware of should they have the team in Singapore, should they have the team in Hong Kong, should it be in Korea. We can explain what other people are doing, and also we can make introductions for them to talk to their peers at other companies. So it's generally really exciting, Dave.
That's quite a jump from your classic sending 3 CVs and trying to get someone to an interview that you don't even know if they're the right person or that's quite a big move away from to the classic or old-fashioned recruitment, whatever you want.
I think we have to do we have to work with TA teams. I think going back to most recruitment owners were told us to avoid dealing with TA teams or talent acquisition teams. You have to engage them. You can still work with direct line managers. That can be still done. You can still work, but we'll partner with TA teams. So the talent acquisition teams, they do some things absolutely brilliantly, but there may be some marketplaces they haven't got the bandwidth or to deal with. One of the things we've done the video interviewing is we had a translation tool that we put in for a month So we, because obviously English wasn't the first language
Yes.
for a lot of these candidates.
Yeah.
So we have to do more and partner with the TA teams. So that's a big difference, I think, nowadays.
Do you think, I was going to say, that's where recruitment needs to go? There's always lots of talk about the future of recruitment businesses, and with TA teams, in-house, in-house recruiters. That's a relatively new thing as well. Then you've got AI. Then you've got various different, not even just AI, just technological things that say, right, that's it. Recruitment's finished. Yeah. Do you think that's the way in which recruitment businesses need to go now?
Absolutely. I mean, for example, I've been brought up, up to about sort of a couple of years ago, it was perm or contract.
Yeah.
Now it's permanent, it can be retained, it can be mandate, it can be subscription services. We have to listen to what the client's pain points are, and then develop the solution behind it.
Yeah.
And it has to be, to get a TA, a retained search launched, you're going to have, you have to demonstrate the value to the TA teams.
Yeah.
Conversely, contract, and we'll come to IR35, is you have to have outcome-based solutions, project solutions.
Yeah.
So it has changed. You have to add value.
How are the TA teams generally, their view on it? I think, without putting words in their mouth, it can be fairly adversarial in terms of, we're here to do this, we don't need you now. The whole no agencies please type thing. How do they respond to that sort of approach?
That's a really good question. It all depends where you're coming from, what your point is. So if you're contacting TA teams, going, have you got any jobs? Have you got any jobs? Have you got any jobs? You're not adding value. If you, for example, speak to them on a regular basis, give them updates, insights, what's happening. For example, one of the areas I do quite a bit of work with is Charles River, which is a front office system for investment management companies. Well, there's things that have happened in the marketplace in London that's sort of has altered the salary bands, altered the landscape. So I'll work with the internal teams to let them know about that. If there's a new implementation that's going to start that could affect their retention of their current staff or current project staff, I will advise them of that. So I think you have to supply information and a service, not just CVs.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? You have to. It's about providing information, I guess, more now than what you used to have to do, because the amount of information and the access that these recruiters, the clients have to candidates is much easier. Their route to market is, they can go onto LinkedIn and put, I want a so-and-so, and they could get some people. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, they would be, I don't even know where to go to get, that they may still want to advertise in newspapers and everyone's on job board, whatever. Whereas now they have that direct access, they have a TA team that can get them that. So it's no longer able to just send them free CVs.
And also market conditions are different at the moment. It's probably a reasonable client-driven marketplace at the moment. So, I was speaking to one of my investment management clients, and he's managed to fill 80% of roles direct himself. But at the same time, the churn that he's had of his current staff has been really low. So that will change.
Yeah.
So at the moment, perhaps the internal teams have got a little bit more bandwidth than they normally would have, because if people are working, they tend not to move.
Yes.
That's changing. But again, there's always going to be areas that they haven't got the footprint in. Yeah. That we're like we're a partner to them.
That's what you have to be now, isn't it?
Like an SAS team.
Yeah. I love it.
You have to, we'll go in, behind enemy lines and scope out a piece of work for them.
Yeah.
But it should be a reciprocal arrangement. So you can always devise something that suits both parties.
Yeah. And from the international side of things, how much time do you spend learning and trying to understand about the culture? You mentioned about the Korean market. Yeah. How much of you can't just rinse and repeat. Well, what happens in the UK market doesn't happen elsewhere. How much time do you spend looking at that? And when you first did it, did you make a mistake with that? Just assuming it's going to be the same.
I think there's two ways. You have to continue to learn. There are cultural differences in every country, but then if you do the right things to the right people, it tends to work in each country.
Yeah.
So we're not a volume-based recruiter, but we like to think we punch above our weight. But then you have to deliver high quality service. You have to supply things that they're not expecting. The Canadian market is different to the US market. The European market,
It'd be really easy to assume the Canadian market and the US market sort of the same. Yeah. That'd be an lazy assumption to make. Right?
Yeah, very different.
Yeah,
very different in compliance, regulation, even the languages. With some stuff we're doing in Canada at the moment is in the French-speaking parts.
Right.
So, and because again we live in more of this global marketplace, a lot of the skill sets that they're looking for are in Europe, and therefore you're looking for French speakers. Well, you've got France, Belgium. You can even look at some of the French and North African-speaking countries. Mm-hmm. So we can provide local candidates to them, but then also go international.
Yeah.
And we know where the sites are. So we're very niche in what we do. We continually network. So again, if someone comes to us, they're tapping into our network. Our speed to hire is very quick, and also we know who not to propose.
Yeah.
Which is equally as important.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned it a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
IR35.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a couple of years ago. Yeah. It was everywhere. It was the headline of every single blog or report. Where are we at with it now? Is it still a pain? Does it? What's this current status with it?
I think 2021, 22, I could kill dinner parties talking about IR35. It's here to stay. That's the first thing. It's here to stay. I would say where you have small to medium-sized companies, you can still get outside of IR35. We have to support the clients with those determinations. My thinking, if it's project-based work and you're engaging a specialist, there's no reason why it shouldn't be outside of IR35, if I use that phrase. If it's network support and it's BAU work, well, it's inside.
Yes. Yeah.
What we're doing is we're setting up a sister company that will purely do sort of the project solutions. So outcomes-based work that will go live in April.
Yeah.
And I found, speaking again, if I look at some of the clients I do work with, I'll work with some US asset managers who have a HR function in the UK, perhaps one person on their own, being asked what is IR35 to a US company. So again, going back to what I said earlier, I'll happily go along, sit with them, explain it. I've got a sort of a material case study of how we've implemented, a compliant process to onboard contractors outside.
Yeah.
So it's changed the landscape. There are certain consultancies that have done very well in the last couple of years. There's certain recruitment businesses that have really suffered. It's here to stay.
Yeah.
So by not acknowledging that, you're going to have to adapt and change.
Yeah. You can't bury your head in the sand.
You can't.
Forever. No. And this other company.
Yeah.
What's
That's
is that top secret?
No, it's not. Yeah. No, it's we're literally going to sort of do the press releases on next week. So we've partnered up with someone works with us in a partnership at the moment, Christina, who she's run the strategy folk out of Asia. She's now based in the UK, and so we're going to set up the strategy folk as a sort of a sister company for the project solutions.
Yeah.
Best way to describe it is, if we're meeting a client, and perhaps they want really specialised contract resource, perhaps it's international candidates. There may be an RPO that's present that will, for their own compliance, will not onboard anyone who's international.
Yeah.
We can offer a project team.
Yeah.
So we did something similar for an Australian insurance company about 2 years ago, where they had a local population of resource, but a lot of the resource was based in Europe. So we had people working out of Dublin, working in Europe, that would then start early. So we managed to create like an 18-hour model for project delivery.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if the client only had people based in Sydney, you're looking at 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it works brilliantly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking to replicate. We have project teams currently working in Sweden, Denmark, Germany, So the idea is, but from IR35 point of view, some clients want to engage a company that's separate to your main area of business.
Yes. And the whole international thing, that's it definitely accelerated through the development of the kind of tech and from a digital point of view. Once upon a time you couldn't do any of this, right? You would be phone calls and emails, but whereas now with, you mentioned video interviews before and online translation, you've got the capability to do that. So do you see this is going to be something that's is going to happen more and more?
If it's done correctly, yes. So a lot of the clients we deal with are global companies. So we perhaps historically worked with them in the UK, but then why not work with them in Europe? Why not work with them in a place like Korea?
Yeah.
Why not work in the States?
Yeah.
But you have to be adding value. So, and it's all about the client. This is the other thing. It's what helps the client.
Yeah.
So it's great that we're setting up this sister company to do the project solutions. It's great we do, but how does it benefit the client? And I think that's where sometimes recruiters go wrong. It's about themselves.
Yes.
Clients invariably don't care what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you ask them what is happening, where are the pain points, what countries do you suffer challenges, what are these challenges, then we can devise solutions for them. Conversely, in the US, it can be really expensive to hire US-based contractors. We can do that, but sometimes we can propose someone of the same skill set that's UK-based, works 2 till 10, speaks fantastic English, for 30% cheaper.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an investment management company in Baltimore, you're probably going to get remote resource coming from Boston or New York.
Yeah.
So why not have that same resource but based in the UK?
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting because there's often been the idea, globalisation is the right word, or but where normally you would have international resource working for companies within the UK because it was cheaper, going Asia way. Yeah. Whereas the example you've just given there is that you can have the resource in the UK working for America, and it's kind of cheaper. So it kind of goes around the world,
and it evolves. It's just continuous. It's continuous change.
As each market changes.
And I would say the person we'll have in the UK, we would have worked with for 8 or 9 years. We've perhaps done 2 or 3 assignments through us. We know them really well.
Yeah.
We can give reference points.
Yeah.
And they've often been working remotely for the last few years anyway.
Yeah, so they're quite comfortable with that.
And so it should be a reciprocal arrangement.
Yeah.
And so these are lots of conversations I'm having with sort of CTOs in the US at the moment is around that. They have pain points, that they are all trying to get the same resource in, and the US candidate pool is quite small in certain places. New York and Boston's a bit different.
Yeah.
But the regional centres, it's very small.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why not have someone based in the UK?
And I suppose each different country they've got their own labour and economic challenges, and skill shortages in certain areas and skill surplus.
You have to be a solutions provider. It's a bit of everyone hears that phrase, but you ultimately do. We've got Niall that's joined us looking at sort of SAP, sort of global alliances and ecosystems in the US. One of the things we're going to create is a partnership with a third party, perhaps based in Argentina or Mexico, that can offer a solution to US companies that wish to save cost, and we'll set up something similar for near shore, offshore in the UK and Europe. So the traditional providing CVs is different.
It's still a world away, almost a world away.
It's a world, but it's still a place.
Yeah.
If a client says, I'm looking for a really good business analyst that can start, next week with this skill set, it doesn't have to be a complete complex solution.
Yes, yeah.
And this is, I think, is keep the simple simple.
Yes, yeah.
That's and make it complex simple as well.
Yeah, yeah. But your point around it has to be for the solution has to be for the client rather than you're trying to crowbar. Yeah. You're trying to create a problem for them, and then you magically have the solution. It has to be based on whatever.
Well, if someone engages with us, for example, a Charles River resource, we pass that person to that client, right? The client's got them for as long as they need them. If the client goes and gets that person from an integration partner, consultancy, or even the vendor, they're going to pay 3 times as much. And if they're really good, the chances are that person will be lifted out and moved to another site.
Yeah.
So working, say, with us or companies like us, small and specialist is where we want to be.
Yeah. Let's kind of have a little nostalgic moment. Just indulge me.
Yeah.
What have been some of the key changes over 10, 15, 2003 you started, right?
Yeah.
So that's 23 years. What has, I remember 2003, it's like a dot-com bubble, that was the time then, and all this sort of stuff. But
I've got a phrase, and I dare say my colleagues will have heard this a million times. Recruitment doesn't go in a straight line. So I think from 2003 to about 2008-09, it was continuous growth. It's fantastic. Going back to mistakes, I remember I had 21 contractors working 18 different clients, and I thought, I've done really well.
Yeah, mate.
And I look back and go, what an idiot. Why didn't you have, 5 at 10?
Yeah, yeah.
You could have done so much more. I think it's changed. And it had to change. I remember you can meet line managers. Literally, I say coffee. It's down the pub. You could get someone started a week later.
Yeah.
It was very quick, very and it could there's no. It wasn't the Wild West, but it was there was less compliance, less something had to change.
Yeah.
I think post the credit crunch, I dealt at that time. I was dealing with sort of investment banks and sort of things like market.
That must have, you were dealing with investment banks around that time.
It was post credit crunch. I started doing investment banks.
Oh right, okay.
But then I done a lot of work with something called Ion Market View,
right.
Which was when the banks reported liquidity, your government bonds or credit bonds, you could report as a collateral. Mm-hmm. So there's a big rush for all these banks to put in Ion Market View.
Yeah.
So I did that. I'd done something called Condor, which is a very old FX and MM sort of money market system. Calypso, bit of Murex, Sophis, which is actually. So I always went specialist.
Don't know any of those names.
No. And some are still lurking around, and now across Europe. But I think it got very where you weren't dealing with people. So I moved to more investment management or fund managers because it's people driven, and it still is in a way. You can still meet people. I can still grab coffees with people, talk about, and they all have the same people. So I mean, recruitment. It has always changed. Mm-hmm. Like Joe, my business partner, he remembers when went from you used to send out a CV, recorded delivery, and you'd ask CV back. Then it went to fax. Then it went to like email. So it's changed. It's always changed.
Yeah.
And don't fight against it. Embrace it.
How? Just talking the credit crunch. I think it's pretty. Well known. We're in quite a tough time at the minute, and I find myself sitting here thinking, well, if we go from the, Wave was in business in the dot-com boom, and then there was the credit crunch, then there was COVID. I was thinking, well, I've been through a few recessions now. I'm quite old. I still think of myself as young, but clearly I'm not. Thinking about the credit crunch, there's some similarities in terms of the market being tough then and tough now, and what can people do, other than having a magic wand to make it all better. What would you kind of say?
Yeah, look, my advice to anyone is worry about what sits in your control. You can't control the marketplace, but you can affect what your outputs are. What you're doing to try and pick up work. Speak to people. Even display, do things expecting nothing back, and that you'll get that return of investment. I think going back to the credit crunch is perhaps you had 50% less jobs after 2009, but the TA teams weren't as sophisticated, so all those 50% of jobs were coming to agencies. Now that's not the case. So that is a bigger challenge, but ultimately go where the work is. If the work is not in front of you, then find out where it is. Understand your marketplace. Understand what's happening, and things change. But I think if you can be consistently consistent, that's paramount. But I think and it will change. But for us, we've had to pivot our business to being more of a solutions-based business. Some of our clients that we have fantastic relationships, but their budgets are going to be a bit quiet over the next 12 to 18 months. So we can keep looking at them. We still remain in contact with them, but go where the work is.
I think recruitment as an industry is pretty agile, isn't it? It can move like
you could be. Let's go back. You can be an entrepreneur. You can. You have to think that you're running a business within a business. I think nowadays, one thing I've had to correct more recently is that I've always relied on telling people what we do face to face, and that's still my preference. But I now have to start. I'm conscious I need to develop my personal brand. Hence, probably why I'm sat opposite you now. And we need to start sort of telling people, showing people, and improving it. And there's things you can do on that journey. So that's something perhaps historically we've not done as well as we could have done.
Why do you think that was?
Because, like the old phrase is, you fix the roof on a sunny day. But when the sun's shining, you don't worry about the roof. So I think now we kind of think, well, actually, no, we've got to build up a library of case studies. We've got to sort of start telling people what we're doing. I think there's agencies like us or companies like us that do a fantastic job. And this is where recruitment can change lives. We've helped people buy houses, contractors, candidates, internal staff. You can make a difference to people. And it's really powerful.
Do you think it's changing? We're going through another change then in terms of your business has pivoted. You've identified a lot of opportunities. In a way, maybe you've gone where the work is from an international perspective. But if we are in a harder time at the moment, which I think we are, it's changing again. So recruitment businesses are evolving and changing. There's another evolution happening now.
Absolutely. I think we'll probably do more change in the next 6 months, or we have done already, than we probably have done in the last 8 years. And it's continuous improvement. And I think even myself, like as a sort of business owner, I'm having to change the way I work. I have to allocate time for working on the business as well as in the business. And that's a challenge that I'm learning as I go along. I make mistakes. But our job, you have to pivot. But it's all goes back. Nothing. What you stand for doesn't change. It is long-term relationships. It is caring. It is, it is working out how you can benefit the client. And understand what the client pain. That hasn't changed. If I told the clients what I'm doing, it doesn't really mean anything to them. If I understand where their problems are, then I can sort of pull off the menu what can solve the problem.
And you start taking an interest in them rather than just
and
talking about it.
It should be a win-win. It should be a reciprocal arrangement. I think that I can deliver a cost-effective service that's quicker, high quality, and chances are it'd be more cost-effective. So why not? But you have to engage, all parties.
And this, that example feels like it's an opportunity, fixing the roof on a sunny day. lends itself to the idea that we are in a slightly difficult time. So maybe it's raining now,
Yes.
but it makes you look at things. It makes you change and evolve, because you kind of have to. You can't just keep doing the same thing, because the roof's leaking a little bit. So there is a positive in the fact that the market's a bit quieter and budgets are a bit slimmer, and people are not recruiting so much. That's the benefit, that it gives you that opportunity to go, right, we need to just clear out some of these things and open up some more opportunities.
I think that's it. And it's external and internal. I think the external stuff is understanding, where, what your clients are up to, where the pain points are, and look at multiple locations, which we're doing. I think it's 15 countries we've done work in the last 6 months, which is great. It's really exciting. I've learned about Polish VAT, for example, that I never had to learn about.
Don't bring that up at a dinner party.
No. It's great. Like I love to create these first world problems to solve. So that's fine. I think internal. I think we're looking at, like, as we say, our IT spend, our tech spend. If we're going to invest in something, we're going to have to save money elsewhere. I think everyone's looking at LinkedIn licenses. Do they add the same amount of value or return of investment that they did 3 or 4 years ago? That's questionable. Especially if your talent acquisition teams are posting jobs on there, as we have to do something that TA teams can't. And that's where search, selection, networking events, and we can invest time in a proper search. They do as well. But certain countries perhaps
you can go deeper, can't you?
We can go deep. We can. If you're an insurance company and you're looking for a senior leader for your business, you can't be seen to extract someone out of your competitors. It may affect the market. So therefore, what we can do, we can sort of do a competitor analysis, market map, sometimes give a long list, and the client can go, I've heard great things about this person, that person, that person. We then do a short list. We then walk people through the process. And also, like with retained search, if the client ends up having someone that's been referred to internally, we can bring them into that mandate as well.
There's a buffer there as well, isn't there?
So it's a reciprocal arrangement. But it definitely is changed.
I think you're probably you've answered this question in the whole of the actual podcast, but just kind of bringing it to sort of a close. If someone was starting out now with what what advice would you give to them other than watch the previous part of this podcast?
It's a really good question. I think the youngsters, or the rookies, whatever you want to call them, have got such a brilliant opportunity because they've been brought up with tech. I haven't, so therefore, they can do things that I wouldn't even dream of doing. They can do video calls, video notes. They can do things using their marketing expertise that they don't even know they've got. But you have to invest time, energy. You have to self-sacrifice. One thing I'll say to anyone is, do a bit of self-learning as well. Invest some time. Whether it's listening to podcasts like this, because you'll get a return of your investment. And be passionate about what you do. Don't be shy if someone asks you what you do for a living. Don't sort of go, be really enthusiastic about it, because you have the ability to change your own life, but you should be able to impact positively on other people. So so it's a great career. I'm very glad I sort of fell into it. Sort of 22 years ago now.
Goes quick, doesn't it? It goes quick.
It's quite scary, isn't it?
As does this podcast.
Yes.
So we've covered quite a lot, I'm sure. So, Mark, brilliant. Thanks very much for coming on. I really enjoyed all of that. So, some really good stuff in there. So,
thank you very much.
Thanks very much.